Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 1-2, however you want to call me, I don't really care. And first and foremost, Happy New Year to all of you guys. 2019 is upon us, January 1st, and we're obviously already back in World of Tanks, grinding our way to the next couple of tanks, next couple of tier 10s. And yeah, I would say that everyone probably has gotten themselves into a position where they want to have a better go at the next year. That basically is happening with everyone all over the world, right? Everyone wants to have a better year than the previous year, and I think that's human. So what kind of aspirations, motivations did I set for myself for the year 2019? And I know people don't usually hold true to them for a very long time, but let's see how long it will stand. This video will be released on Wednesday. Right now, I'm producing it on Tuesday. And what I want to try and do is revive the What to Expect series. The series that I had on my channel for quite a while, but haven't updated in I think about 1 or 2 years, where I take a tier 10 tank and review it and put it out so you guys know what you're getting yourself into. Today we're going to be featuring the T-57, and next week on Wednesday, if everything is going according to plan, we are going to be taking a look at the Sheridan, the tier 10 American light tank. You can see the tech tree has changed quite a lot, quite drastically over the last couple of years, and the tier 10 tanks that I did feature back in the days, like the E5, the T110E4, or the T110E3, are no longer up to date. These videos will probably be remade sometimes later, but right now I want to finish the American tech tree that I have unlocked. I have unlocked every single American tier 10 tank, and I've played every single one. Not very often though. I haven't played the T-57 as often as the T110E5, but the T110E5 is in the thousands. I think 1,200 games I've played in that vehicle. It's one of my most played tanks in the game. So, starting off, the T-57 with the brand new look. It looks really, really nice in this style that you got through the loot boxes. And yes, I have bought 75 loot boxes. And I did get pretty lucky. I got like 4 or 5 tier 8 premium tanks, including the Defender, which I did already own, and also the IS-3A, which I did already own as well. But that is put to the side. So, the T-57, it is one of 3 heavy autoloading tier 10 vehicles in the game, next to the AMX 50B and the Kranvagn with the Swedish tech tree. How do you get to the T-57? There are several ways. Actually, there's just one. Excuse me. You can play the M2 light tank and go through the Steward line, which are actually not that great tanks. The M7 is one of the medium vehicles that I did enjoy, one of the very first medium tanks I possessed in my garage. Then the T21, the T71, and you'll end up to the T69. Now, it is a mix of light tanks that are turning into medium tanks at the end and then into heavy tanks. And this branch does deviate from time to time. I thought that the M7 was a medium tank, but it turns out this has become a light tank. I think back in the days it was a medium tank, or maybe I'm just mistaken. So you end up with the T69, the very first medium tank on the American line that has an autoloader. The T71 is no medium tank, but does have an autoloader, and the T69 does share very similar looks to the T57. I did enjoy my T69. It was a nice tank. It wasn't as competitive as other tier 8 medium tanks. For example, tanks that I did enjoy at tier 8 as mediums were, why am I over here? Obviously, a T-44, that was not a very good tank back in the days, but now it's very, very strong. And yeah, T-44, I think it's more competitive than the T-69, although it does have very, very good penetration with its premium rounds. T-54E1, I do enjoy this tank. I do enjoy that much that I still have it in my garage. And the T-57 obviously is the king in which you end up on if you go down that line. So what do we get with the T-57? For that, I've prepared 3 vehicles, or pretty much I have put all the 3 tier 10 heavy autoloading tanks in the game into the comparison wheel, and we can actually check out all of these vehicles. Now, I do own the AMX 50B, I do own the T-57, I do not own the Kranvagn, but I've configured all of these tanks to their standard settings without any crew skills. It's 100% crew. It's the same equipment on every single vehicle, and no other changes have been made. So these statistics that you'll be seeing right here are very basic and should give you kind of an overview on what you will be expecting with the T-57 or the AMX-50B. So they all have the same caliber. All 3 of the tanks are running a 120mm gun, which does a 400 alpha damage shot. Now, the difference is that the T-57 does have a bit better pen than the Kranvagn and the AMX-50B. The Kranvagn, its standard rounds are actually APCR shells, while the T-57 and the AMX-50B still rely on AP shells. The rate of fire is a very big difference though on the T-57 compared directly to the Kranvagn and AMX-50B. While you have 8.15 rounds per minute, that is a reload time of 25 seconds per clip, or 23.44 if you have 100% crew on it. And you can see that speed in which you are able to put out these shells and reload them at the same time just gives you a very big edge, especially compared to the Kranvagn. It has really like almost 9 seconds shorter reload than the shorter reload than the Kranvagn, and that is very, very impressive. Now, if we take a look at the turret traverse speed, it's also on the same level as the AMX-50B, 38.4 degrees per second, which is decent, especially if you're comparing it to the Kranvagn, but we'll all know what the difference is right there, but we'll get to the armor in a little bit. So the gun depression, on the other hand, is not the best out of the 3. The Kranvagn really takes the crown on that. 12 degrees of gun depression for the Kranvagn. This tank is supposed to be a Ridgeline Warrior, and you can see with the turret armor that it does possess, it is really good at what it is supposed to be doing. Best gun elevation is on the 50B and the T-57. 12 degrees of gun elevation is nothing. Keep that in mind. 12 degrees of gun elevation is absolutely nothing. If you have vehicles above you on a ridgeline and you are below them, with 12 degrees of gun depression, you will not be able to shoot them. So if they can get over the edge of the slope or whatever hill they are on, they can easily shoot you while you can do absolutely nothing against them. So keep that in mind. These vehicles are great ridgeline tanks, but they're very, very bad in lower ground situations. So if you own the high ground, you are going to be in a very good position. If you do not own the high ground, well, you are probably in for a very, very ugly time. So all 3 of the vehicles have a magazine with 4 shells, and the fastest shot, fastest reload time in between the shots goes to the T-57 with 2 seconds per round. And this is just a vehicle that is absolutely great at close to mid distances. It's just going to be, putting out these shots in a very quick succession, 6 seconds maximum to deal 1600 damage. That is very, very much impressive. Aim time is not the best on the T-57. It's better on the AMX-50B and the Kranvagn, but at the same time, dispersion is rather good. And you can see that this does give you a very high DPM of 3.2 thousand, damage per minute, which is, I think, almost on the top levels. I think it's one of the best vehicles with damage per minute, and it certainly does resemble that with its magnificent firepower. So, moving on. HP wise, it does have the most HP, 250 HP more than the Kranvagn, which is sitting at 2000. So 2250 HP does allow you to take a couple of shots from enemy tanks, even tank destroyers. The hull armor is very decent, 228 millimeters at the front, but the sides are very weak, 44 on the side and 44 on the rear. Now, the hull armor usually on this tank, it's similar to the hull armor of the T-110E5, just that it's not as well angled, so you can pretty much penetrate this tank quite easily on the front of its hull or the lower plate. But there are still occasional bounces, especially because of its weird shape of its turret and its hull. So 152 millimeters on the turret is decent. It's not as good as the Kranvagn with its 225 millimeters and the very crazy slope it has. But at the same time, because of the slopes that are like really different on this tank, if we take a look like at its model, if people are shooting you like right here at the cheek and you're turning it away because of the angle, because it's so rounded, it might bounce. Or even like the gun mantlet right here, people are usually shooting like the gun, or they're kind of just praying and shooting the turret, because, you know, if you have 4 rounds in your clip and you're facing a T-57, you're doing something wrong. And a lot of times people shoot the gun mantlet and it bounces because of the very awkward angle that you have. And that is one of the, you know, best advantages that you have in this vehicle in comparison to the AMX-50B. The AMX-50B is one of those tanks that gets really, really easily outmatched because its hull armor is terrible, its turret armor is terrible. People do not enjoy it as much, and thus people are usually playing this vehicle more as a support role in the second line of defense or second line of attack, that being the AMX-50B. So armor survivability is decent, but it's not great per se. The Kranvagn definitely does take the crown in that category, but still, I think it is fairly balanced in that sense. Mobility wise, it's not the fastest. It does have a top speed of 35 km, which does not come close to the 65 or 60 km per hour that the Kranvagn or the AMX-50B get. But you can see the horsepower, the engine that the AMX-50B gets, 1,200 horsepower. That's just too good for the T-57, which only gets 810 horsepower, but weighs very similar to the AMX-50B. The Kranvagn, on the other hand, is a rather light tank, 700 horsepower, but only 45.3 tons, so it does get up to the 60 kilometer per hour mark, but not as fast as the AMX-50B gets up to the 65 kilometer per hour mark. Traverse speed is also better on the AMX-50B with 38.4 degrees per second, and the 32 degrees on the T-57 is not bad, but it's also not something you'll write home about. So what can you say about the AMX-50B and the T-57 in that comparison? Well, the AMX-50B is definitely better at changing positions, while the 57 might still be able to change a position, but it's going to take a lot longer. It's very similar to the T-110E5, which also is running around at 35 kilometers per hour. Going over to concealment and spotting, both of these things are very similar. I do have camouflage on both of these tanks. The AMX-50B is a bit more difficult to hide because of its height. The 57 is not a vehicle that is going to stay hidden for very long, or is going to outspot any medium or light tanks. That's just not their role. The 57 is just absolutely great at short to mid ranges, and with its very, very strong gun and its very good average damage per minute, and the added bonus of having somewhat decent armor in these close quarter situations where some shots might bounce, this is a very versatile vehicle in close quarter combat and very, very dangerous. The statistics give you kind of an overview on how well this tank can do in a very nice close quarter engagement where it can dictate the pace of the combat. And I think to be able to see what this vehicle is capable of, we should look at some games, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be taking a look at one game where this vehicle is in its perfect environment, and we're going to see what you can do with this vehicle in that sense. So let's go over and take a look at the game. This play for this tank review was a tier 10 and tier 8 and tier 9 match on El Khalouf. Now, El Khalouf, if you've played Wolf Tanks before, you know that the north part of the map, especially the A, B, C line on the A1-2 squares, it is a very nasty kind of fight. People tend to stalk tanks over there and try to engage each other. And without great gun depression or gun elevation, especially at B2, you're kind of screwed because you cannot shoot these guys over the ridgeline without being able to to get over the ridgeline to be able to shoot them. So the 8 degrees of gun depression, albeit they are not the worst, they're also not the best. 8 degrees of gun depression actually is decent in my opinion, but it's not good enough for ridgeline fights or some ridgeline fights. The Kranvagn obviously has a very nice advantage with its 12 degrees of gun depression and its very good turret. If there's no artillery, it can go hull down in very, very ugly positions, and where the enemy team will have to flank it or just, pretty much storm the vehicle, storm the hill. So what we are trying to do right here is I want to go into the B2 position and engage these guys on my own terms. I know there's only one artillery and it's only a tier 8 artillery on this match, so I know I can be more aggressive. I know that my turret does have some ability to bounce some shots, but it's not going to be 100% efficient like the Kranvagn, which will bounce quite a lot more shots in this vehicle. Now this kind of gameplay style in an AMX-50B would be very, very difficult to do because, let's face it, the turret armor of the AMX-50B is just not going to cut it. So if I would be playing an AMX-50B, I'm probably sitting somewhere close to base and wait until my team is kind of able to push one flank and just assist them by driving behind them and shooting whatever gets left behind. I'm not sure. AMX-50B is going to be a lot more difficult to play. So what we're trying to do right now is to get into the position. I was kind of afraid that the LT-432 was going to spot us and put some very ugly rounds into us, or the tank destroyers that are sitting at base. So right now we're just kind of looking here where we can fit in, maybe shoot a couple of shots off at some of these tanks. My main priority right here was the not the AMX, the M46 Patton. But as you can see, we're not really in the position to engage him as long as he is always falling back. And the turret on the Patton does provide some sort of protection because it's very nicely angled. So what I decide to do right here is to engage the Jagdpanzer 100. Right here you can see the accuracy. Well, it's not bad, but it does need some time to focus, to aim in, to have a fully fledged out reticle, and that just is a bit different on the AMX-50B. I think on the AMX-50B we probably would have penned 1 or 2 shots, and it was kind of unfortunate. So with 258 millimeters of penetration, we're unable to go through a Jagdpanzer 100 frontally. And I know this is a very critical place where we need to get some advantage on HP, or otherwise they're just going to push us. And I know in this tank, if they start to push me, I will not be able to do anything. So I decide to load a heat clip. A heat clip is able to go through the side of the front part of the turret, no, not the turret, front part of the Jagdpanzer 100 on the left cheek next to the gun, or the right cheek next to the gun, But you still have to be very careful, especially if the Jagdpanzer 100 is moving back or forwards. If he's angled just a little bit, it's not going to be enough. Now, that's just a problem with Wall of Tanks at this current stage. There are just too many tanks with no apparent weak spots if they can hide like their lower plate or whatever. And thus, I decide to load a heat clip. It didn't really work out. We only penned twice. I mean, that's still 800 damage that we did to him, or almost 800 damage. But we didn't do the full potential of 1600 HP worth of damage. So right now we're kind of in a sticky situation. The reload time, as you can see right here, only 22 seconds for me with my trained crew. I'm able to actually shoot much faster, and I can wait for this T-57, and this is the ideal position where you want to be in a T-57. Look at how quickly we were able to put out these shots, how this T-57 was punished by just coming out, and 3 rounds, 2 of them penetrated, and you can see easily 700 damage with the assisted damage by the artillery. That's 900 damage that we dealt to the T-57 in such a short amount of time. And we're already almost reloaded. We're already like set and ready to go, get at the M46 pattern. First shot, unfortunately, bounces. He bounces off us as well, and this is exactly what I mean with, you know, this tank is very weirdly angled, thus some shots are just going to be bouncing. And right now we're kind of in a situation where we know, okay, well, we just knocked out, or at least artillery knocked out the Jagdpanzer 100. There's still a T-57 in front of us in that little dip. There's a Moistion over there, and I decide to reload because I only have 2 more shots. It's not going to be enough to, you know, dissuade the Moistion from moving up. It's not going to be enough to take on the M46. It's going to be enough to take on the T-57, but better safe than sorry. So I reload, and I do have nice, or a nice bit of amount of cover right here next to my tank with the 2 wrecked friendlies that I have. The M46 is not paying attention to us, and this is ultimately what kills him. He didn't pay attention to us, we reloaded in time, and there you go. That is a full HP, or almost full HP, M46 pattern taken out in a single clip. And that is just what this tank does best. Now, with the 8 degrees of gun depression, if you're a Kranvagn in this position, with 12 degrees of gun depression, you would have been able to sit behind the T110E5 wreck and just shoot this guy without a problem. And you can see 258 millimeters of penetration is going to be enough to go through the side cheek of the Moistion. It is enough to go through the side cheek of the mouse if it's you know, not angled at all. And we do another, I think, 1,300 damage to the Moistion, or I think it was maybe 1,100 damage. And that is just what this tank does best. And now we load an additional heat clip to finish off the Moistion, because at that angle we're just not going to be capable of penetrating the Moistion very reliably. So we're at 5,668 damage. We blocked 1,270 HP worth of damage. Some of it was very fortunate for us. Some of it, well, yeah, what do you want to say? It's just the Moistion was shooting high explosive, and then he was unlucky with his 1 hit. And now we only have heat left behind, because if you're playing tier 10 and you're facing only tier 10s, the Type 5 heavy or super heavy Jagdpanzer 100s, well, you do resort to premium ammunition to be able to go through them. And you can see just what premium ammunition does right there. 6,000 damage. We have just finished off a Emil 1 Swedish tier 8 heavy tank, and now with 6,000 damage and 3 kills, we can easily go up here and see to it that we can finish off some more vehicles. I think I decide to reload. Actually, no, I'm not reloading right now. But you can see that this game is almost finished. We only have 3 more enemy vehicles that we have to engage. And yeah, I'd say it was a very, very good round. 6,406 62 damage, and we still have quite a few rounds left. We could have done even more damage if we would have been a little bit faster, like the AMX-50B or the Kranvagn. But still, I'm very satisfied with this game. Unfortunately, now I only have heat left. I'm probably going to be restocking a bit more AP, especially in these games. With AP shells, you're going to be doing just fine. So to recap what we did right there on the ridgeline, we had several tanks that were facing us, but they were not able to shoot us because we were kind of playing it a bit more cautiously than we usually do. At the same time, we were able to dictate the pace of the combat, and we were able to take him out one by one. And you could see just how painful it is for enemy tankers to get in front of this tank. No one, absolutely no one, should and wants to go by their free will in front of a T-57, because it's not going to end well, especially if he has loaded a heat clip. He's just going to tear through you, do 1,600 or even more damage, maybe even 1,800 damage to you, and you're going to be sitting there with a very painful, maybe 200 HP remaining. So my verdict to this tank, it is an absolute great vehicle if you can dictate the combat, if you can you know be the one who engages. It is very versatile in the role that it does reload very, very quickly. So even if you're on a reload and there are several other tanks, they might shoot you once or twice, you're most of the time still able to get the clip in before they're able to get off the second shot. And that is giving you a huge bonus. The 2,250 HP are very nice as well. They're on a great level where you can, trade from time to time, but you still have to be wary, and sometimes the armor is good enough to assist you in those engagements, especially if you're going up against a tier 9 or tier 8 vehicle. You might bounce 1 or 2 shots, and that just can be the difference in this tank, where you can just, be able to dish out 2 more clips that are 3,200 damage, and that just is a huge bonus to your team, a huge bonus to yourself. And that is why this tank is so damn good. I think it's one of the best tier 10s. I think it's balanced quite nicely. Maybe the premium ammunition is a bit too strong, but I think it's just one of those tanks that people can enjoy very, very quickly. It can be learned. It doesn't have as steep of a learning curve as the AMX-50B does have, because it just doesn't have any armor. But at the same time, it does punish you if you are playing it wrongly. It doesn't punish you as much as the MX-50B, and I think that's the reason why people enjoy it so much. I think it's a great tank. I love my T-57. I do have great games in it, especially those guys who know what they're doing. They know that this is a vehicle with great potential, and you always have to be careful of engaging a T-57. It's one of the best tier 10 heavy tanks, I think, in the game. It's one of the funnest to play, and I certainly do think if you're trying to go for the American line and you're choosing between the T110E5 and the T57, and you might like autoloaders, this might just be the tank for you. It is armored enough to be, in some engagements. It's so much fun in close quarter combat, and it does punish enemy vehicles. Is it overpowered in that sense? It might be strong, but I don't think it's overpowered. It certainly is better than some other vehicles, the AMX-50B or even a Kranvagn in certain situations, if you need to have a clip ready faster than, in 32 seconds. You almost save 10 seconds with this tank in comparison to the Kranvagn. Kranvagn does have better turret armor, but I think considering that this tank just is so fast and at shooting tanks and reloading and has such a damage output potential, I think this vehicle, I would prefer this over the Kranvagn. Even though I don't own a Kranvagn, I think I would prefer it. So that pretty much wraps up this review of the T-57. I hope you did see the potential this vehicle has. Downfall of this tank is just when you get hit when you're clipping, or when you just get really unlucky, you're out in the open and you're not fast enough and they spot you, you're going to get annihilated, especially if they get your side or rear armor. This tank does not have any side or rear armor, and that is good because it's balanced in that kind of sense. It does have 8 degrees of gun depression. It's not the best, but it's enough to be managing some ridge lines. Not every single ridge line, but some of them. And I think it's one of the tanks that people do enjoy because it does have massive potential, but it can also, you know, be a pretty tough side from time to time if you get like caught up early. So that was this review. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. From a week from now, Wednesday, we're going to be covering the Sheridan, a very, very interesting light tank, and one of them that I enjoy very, very much. Up until then, I'll see you guys on the next video.